This is a test of the City of Palatka audio system.
All right. You may countdown. You ready? Okay, we're going to go ahead and call this meeting to order. This is the City of Palatka CRA workshop for July 15th, 2022. We're going to have our invocation and our pledge. We're going to have the invocation from Chaplain Mulberry. We'll have the pledge from Commissioner Bohr. Chaplain Mulberry, you lead us.
Father, again, we thank you for this day. We give you glory and praise. We give you honor. We lift you up. We magnify you and we bless your name. We pray, God, that you would bless the working minds of your people as we come to do the business of the city. Pray for your wisdom and guidance in all that we undertake to do. Let your name be praised alone. We give you honor for it in Jesus' name. Amen.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you. Roll call, please.
Commissioner Tammy McCaskill.
Here.
Commissioner Will Jones is present via telecommunications technology. Commissioner Justin Campbell.
Present.
Commissioner Rufus Borum.
Present.
Mayor Terrell Hill.
Here.
Commissioner Jeff Ross. He's
Show the
also
Commissioner
on-
Ross on Zoom. For the record, we have a quorum and all members are present. Next up is public comments. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. No action will be taken on topics of discussion. Anyone here wishing to speak during public comment, there are yellow speakers cards in the back of the room. Please fill those cards out and attach the agenda item that you want to speak to, and we will address that accordingly. Is there anyone here for public comment at this time? Hearing no one, we'll close public comment. We'll move on to agenda item number 3. Presentation and discussion overview of the fiscal year 21-22 and discussion of budget. Ms. Shane.
Okay, so I will start off by saying that the TIF fund overall did very well ending fiscal year 21 and started off the year great. So we're looking at our balance forward into next year, and this is just strictly cash unrestricted moving forward of $1 million combined. The rates at the top, as far as what is being contributed with property taxes, is based on 6.4 and also the county's flat millage as well, which of course are undecided at this point. And we can go on to the next one, Sunny. So an overview of what we've done in downtown TIF this year. In December of 2021, we pulled $50,000 from reserves to purchase properties. The first property was acquired, the first property that was acquired was 308 North 11th Street. And the second property was 302 North 11th Street. We do have remaining funds in this fiscal year for demolition costs. And then we also have 2 public art projects, one carried over from last fiscal year, and they've just begun work on that one. That is actually across the street on the side of Nicole's Salon building. They just primed it, and we've gotten our first invoice on that. So our plan is to go ahead and carry forward those 2 public art projects. The downtown TIF also paid for the Christmas lights and decorations this fiscal year. And the recruitment project, which is the last of that because we actually adopted the building improvement grant. The last 2 recipients was Lemon Street Market for $5,000 and Jeremy and Crystal Alexander for $25,000, which will carry into next fiscal year, as well as 2 Keys. 2 Keys has $30,000 awarded to them, and their documents are signed, but they're still in their period. So it's still an active grant.
Question as it relates to the public art portion. I know we had those projects that were specifically allocated that we were looking at on the public arts piece. if you look at some of the other murals, and one of the things that the mural committee talked about was some of those murals are going to need touch-ups pretty soon. It may be necessary so you carried the 10 forward and then you added another 10 to it.
Correct.
I don't know, it may be necessary for us to at least, as we do our contingencies, to make sure that there's some other resources there. Because if you look at, there have been a few of those murals that are kind of dated. And they could definitely use touch-ups along the way. And a lot of people coming in town just to see those. And then there may be some additional public art projects that the community wants to see.
I put in 5,000 for touch-ups. But if you want me to slot more, I can bump it to 10.
I just put it out there really for
Okay.
conversation to see what the agency's position was, if anyone else's thought was, and anyone else thought about that as well.
We had a discussion about that prior. I think we need to find out in the process whether or not we should move up to 10,000, sorry. Increase it to 10,000 versus the 5,000. We don't need that amount.
Which in that public art line would just increase it from 20,000 to 25,000.
Okay.
Any other comments on that?
If I can, I'm having a hard time hearing and there's a lot of freeze framing. Can y'all hear me okay?
Yeah, we hear you. Yes, sir, we hear you.
Would it hurt to just go ahead and put $10,000 in there and then see what it's going to cost later?
That's what, so that was basically what Commissioner McCaskill just suggested.
Okay,
Just leaving the line, carrying over and leaving that line at 25 so that we can see what's there. And if it carries, then we'll know, we'll have a better idea moving forward.
okay, I'm good with that.
Okay, Shane.
This year, we also wanted to move $50,000 into the building improvement grant, but decided that we would award a recruitment. Yes, a recruitment project for an applicant. So this year it actually moved down to 25. If it's the wish of the board, we can move that back to the 50,000. And that's what we've proposed in this budget.
To move it to 50. Looks like we're gonna, I mean, these grants are getting a lot of activity and a lot of people are asking for them, particularly in the Central Business District and the South Historic. And so I don't think we've had, much by way of traction north,
One,
but right, the one for the fence.
no. For the building improvement cost share grant, there was one application.
Okay.
It was a different house.
And that was in the first period.
Yeah, in the first period.
Okay. So, and how many did we get in the other two districts?
I don't know the exact number, but it was a lot.
Significantly more.
Significantly more.
Okay. So,
And that provides commercial and residential.
right.
Yes, ma'am.
Any questions or comments as based on the information you've heard thus far? And quite frankly, I don't know if there's ever going to be an amount that you put in that line item that puts us to where you're going to satisfy. You're not going to satisfy the masses at all. Once you rank them, it'll end up with a whole different conversation. So 50,000 proposed, seems as though seems like everybody's by consensus is okay with that. Let's move forward.
In the transfers category, I did propose an increase on the fireworks just based on actuals and the events. So this is actually a reimbursement to general fund where the 4th of July actual event is paid from. So I'm proposing 14,000 to be sent over, and that's just to cover the cost of fireworks.
Question on the fireworks. Don't we also get contributions in from
Profits.
community? And
Correct. So the contributions that come in to general fund pay for the portalets down at the riverfront, the catering, and I'm going to defer to Eddie. I'm trying to think of everything. There are some additional costs. So
for city calls.
correct. And we take the contributions to pay for those additional costs.
Okay, that makes sense.
Go ahead.
I'm saying that covers the kids play zone and those like that we had out there. It covers the catering for the VIP section upstairs and stuff like that.
And the other thing is, I think, and by the way, great job on 4th of July this year. I think having the festival aspect of it creates another opportunity to offset with some revenues. You know, it creates more from the standpoint of from the labor side, but I think it offsets with revenues, and it also puts people in a better mindset to contribute because they're seeing it grow.
Bringing that attention to our downtown area on the riverfront is just amazing for every business down there.
So yeah, this year was absolutely super. Just seeing the spread go from the park all the way back to Reed Street.
Yeah, and then the food vendors pay us too. So we collected about $10,000 from sponsorships and the food vendors.
And is there a way that if people wanted to contribute, like, for instance, if we're not actively seeking contributors, right? They just voluntarily saying, hey, I would like to contribute.
Now, we actually send out sponsorship letters. We have a list of probably about 75 to 120
Okay.
sponsorship letters that we send out on a regular basis. And then we do go door to door. Aaron and Courtney went door to door asking the vendors if they want to help out.
Okay.
Yeah. Mandy, you know how that works, right?
I sure do.
So Ms. Tucker's worked on that for a number of years before Mr. Cutright took over.
She can have it back.
All the work they do.
So it's definitely a solicitation on it. I think the biggest piece was with the way the climate has been economically right now. You saw a reduction. Historically, it's been around 16,000 in contributions we would get. We made the fireworks longer than they have been historically. And so, but the contributions have gone down by about 30% thus far. And so, you know, hopefully there's a upturn in the economy at some point soon. I don't know, with gas being $6, but we will we'll hope that we can continue to move that forward.
Contributions went down, but the attendance went up.
Absolutely.
Well, part of that contribution going down, you know, we had just came off of Blue Crab, so a lot of our sponsors was kind of tapped out a little bit.
Right.
Okay.
So moving into the projects, one notable change that you'll see in the next workshop is that we are anticipating additional funding needed for the streetscape project. So that contribution from downtown CRA, we're going to take it from 107,000 that was kind of projected initially and carried forward to about 500,000.
If we go back to the fireworks piece for 1 second, can we, I know that item looks, we're at 14. Can we take that up to 20 and see if we can squeeze a second fireworks in, maybe in an off season? So that there's an opportunity for us to do something different. We know just from the research that we've done that fireworks are a great attractor into the downtown area. Any thoughts on that from the agency to be able to squeeze in a second fireworks activity? Whether that's, we have fireworks with Blue Crab. We have fireworks with 4th of July. It may be something we could do maybe in the off season, the Christmas season or something to that effect.
New Year's.
New Year's.
Right. Well, that's going to be a hot season and 6,000 won't cover it. But we can do it maybe.
Christmas Day.
Well, we can try to see if there's an off-season time that works, that puts that in place. Yes, sir.
We have Jingle Jam.
Jingle Jam.
Early December that we can tie in the fireworks piece to that if you wanted to.
And
I got another thing, probably want to at least talk about or think about with Juneteenth and the independence for all of America and different things of that nature. I was out and about and some people came up to me and talked about we celebrate the 4th of July, but I think we should think about at least celebrating Juneteenth in terms of some levels of fireworks or Independence Day for all Americans too. So we just
Commissioner Barney, and we actually got that on our calendar for a holiday to do for community affairs next year.
Right.
Since everything was kind of coming off the ground this year,
Right.
Next year we have Juneteenth be definitely one of the more events that we will have some going on too.
right, fireworks too.
Yeah, we fireworks in it. All right.
I just want to put it out there.
Anything else?
I got a question.
Yes, sir.
Regarding the fireworks around Christmas or New Year's, has there been any communication, or could we have some communication maybe with DPI and the businesses, not just downtown, but just in Palatka in general, to see if they would help sponsor that?
Yeah, we can. Well, the letters that go out, a lot of them go out to chamber members already, but we can definitely extend the communication even further out.
I lost you for a second. For some reason, I'm having a bad connection today.
You got that 1G.
I'm on a hard connection. That's what's weird.
So the letters that go out to a lot of the local businesses that are chamber members that have historically given, as well as some of the newer businesses and even individuals who contributed. We can extend it. We can extend our reach even further. So if there are any specific businesses that you have in mind, get with Mr. Cutright and Community Affairs, and we can make sure that we add them to the comprehensive list.
I heard you say specific and then you cut out. I'm sorry. I'll tell you what, I'm gonna switch to mobile and head to my other office. So I think that'll be better for me.
You should try to log in on your flip phone.
I am. I'll do that right now, then I'll head to my other desk.
I have a question, and it's along the lines, when we're doing fundraising, do we, for lack of better words, are we nickel and diming, or are we asking for contributions that will cover a multitude of events? Because I know some in my collecting of funding, they suggest, or they make the suggestion that we ask for a lump sum versus the nickel and diamond for every event. So how do we do that?
Eddie, do you want to speak to that? I know at a previous meeting, you suggested actually that very thing.
Yeah, I'll take it so you don't have to stand back up again. The way that the fundraising has been event specific based upon what we're doing thus far. There are some organizations, some companies that will say, hey, we'll give you X amount of dollars and then you can use it for events that meet our criteria. But what we found historically is the trend that kind of went with Georgia Pacific, for example, when Mr. Alexander was there, it's changed now. So where you get a lump sum from some of these major organizations in the past, they now want to make sure it meets. So for example, GP's criteria is the 4 E's. And so if it doesn't meet the 4 E's, they don't want to do it that way. If you're talking if they're going to do 5 or 6 contributions for the year, then yeah, they'll try to put something from a budget standpoint. But most of the organizations want to be event specific. And that's what we've seen as the trend going around. And the reality is we actually got pretty good on fundraising over the years. And so that piece isn't necessarily the issue. The issue is the number of events are increasing on a regular basis, and you're seeing significantly more activity throughout the entire community. And the other part is people aren't given the same way just because of where we are from an economic climate. And so the ratio at which they're given has gone down significantly over the last few years.
I think that's a great approach as well that we could look into, especially this year, because we're really looking to solidify specific events that the commission is going to approve in the next fiscal year and outline true budgets for them. So then we could approach certain sponsors and say, do you want a lump sum for a specific event? So it can be presented both ways, I think.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I was trying to get unmuted. I'm sorry, I was trying to get unmuted. I know personally, from a business perspective, it would not matter to me necessarily what event it went to. But if you did a fundraising and you didn't specify the event, how would you do the marketing at that point, or marketing credits?
How would you market it?
How would you give, like when you're doing the credits to the folks that sponsored, If a business gave you a couple $1,000, said, look, I don't care if you put it towards one firework event or 3 fireworks events. How do you promote that company or give credit to that company for sponsoring? Because a lot of times, our business the same way. We don't mind donating money, but at the same time, it's part of our marketing as a business.
Any takers?
Well, I mean, one of the ways that we, the organization that I'm a part of, that has changed our method of solicitation of funding, you provide the opportunity for them to specify if it's a one-time and give them the opportunity to say what the one-time is. But if they're giving, you just let them know that the opportunity is there to be publicized on all events that that organization would be doing, if it's not specific to a one single event.
All right. Okay. I guess the advantage of not specifying is if you do a fundraising event and you raise enough money to do 3 fireworks displays, then you're all good. If you only raise enough to do 2 and people specify which ones, it makes it more restrictive if you could shuffle money around and actually squeeze in the 3rd. So I personally think it'd be better, and I, from a business standpoint, wouldn't care if it was just donate the money and you guys specify where it goes, and not run the risk of not having that 3rd or 4th display, whatever the target number of fireworks displays are.
Well, I also think that I'm sorry, Commissioner Borum had a comment before him.
I think, I don't know where we're trying to go with that, but I think if an organization gives money for whatever the occasion may be, that we have a check and balance in place, that if they say, okay, well, I want to give it to whatever events you're having, that whatever funds that we use, that we tie those funds to those events and credit those contributors. And, and one is, if it's not exhausted, then if you don't carry out those events, and I think the funds should be returned back to the vendor if they're not consumed. And so just because they give us a lump sum, we need to make sure that we are using those funds for the purpose. And if they're not used, not to them, to another line item or whatever.
I'll also understand, I guess the easiest example for me to use is it's far different when you're contributing to PAL, because you know that all the organization's mission is geared toward youth sports, or you're contributing to the Cancer Society or Putnam First Cancer, because you know the mission is tailored. But when you're talking about giving to the city, it's probably the best example is what you do when you contribute to a university, and that money is not earmarked for a specific department. Then you find yourself in a position where the discretion is now placed on staff as to where they use it. And one of the places of contention that you see is that the intent of the donor sometimes doesn't necessarily meet the need of the organization, and you can find yourself subject to scrutiny. And I've seen it with people making larger contributions and wanting, and with, and giving the desire that the money go into a certain pot, but also allowing leeway for it to go in different places, where you now find yourself subject to scrutiny. And, and as the dollars go up, the interest and the concern change. And so that it's not a deterrent from, I think, what Commissioner Campbell said, but it's also just food for thought as we move forward, so that if that's the position that we decide to take, that we make sure that, we set policies that will put us in a position so that there won't be, and so that we can minimize what controversies may potentially come from that.
Mayor, can I make a comment?
I would like to kind of clarify my question and the reasoning for my question. The reasoning for my question was just to determine how the process of how we go out and solicit funds, because again, in more recent, we've had, speaking of GP, just the way that they change. And I want to make sure that if they've changed, that we've made sure that we've aligned ourselves with other entities or other organizations that may have changed, so that we know not to go to them in nickel and dime, ask for a lump sum and move forward. That's the reason for my question, not to say who, how, but just to make sure that we align ourselves and know the background of when we go to solicit funds, the best method to get the best bang for our buck when we are soliciting funds for that from that organization.
Yeah, and that's done through the relationship management piece that comes along with it. And that's, so what we've been doing is really building relationships with the individuals who actually set those processes, so that that's put in place. And I think Mr. Cutright and his team, as well as Ms. Tucker and her team, have done an excellent job, and the commission as a whole, in building those relationships. So we do know. Anything
Mayor, could I
else?
offer a comment?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. I apologize for having to appear by Zoom, but I think everybody understands why. This discussion was probably going to come up in the general budget discussion as well. I don't know that Mr. Cutright had an opportunity to fully explain some of his concerns, but I believe that he's had some concerns about, and I think you touched upon it, Mayor, and I think maybe it has been touched upon by Commissioner Campbell as well, but he has a concern about the repetitive process of going back to the same donor multiple times during the year. At least he's expressed that concern to me. Now, he's there, Mr. Cutright's certainly able to speak for himself, but he's expressed that concern to me. And he's also expressed a concern of the fact that it seems to have a diminishing return effect. We had talked about establishing an overall budget in the general budget for all of the events that'll be handled through recreation, so that you had a target, and then go into the primary sponsors. That doesn't mean that you won't go hit individual sponsors or some additional sponsors if you have a need or a special event, but try to hit the major sponsors once a year and basically provide them with an idea of what our budget was and what our need was, to see if they might appreciate only being asked to contribute once. It might help them in budgeting how much they contributed. And an additional thought that I had, which may or may not be good, but for discussion, is if we have multiple events budgeted in advance and planned in advance, you could even perhaps give them the option of deciding which ones they'd like to have their monies applied to, and that noted by sponsorship banners or whatever we're going to have at some of the major events like Blue Crab or Mayor's Reception or whatever. So just food for thought.
Yeah, good point. You got something else, Commissioner?
Yeah, I mean, that was a great point, and that's where I was trying to hit to. But like you say, we have multiple events per year. There are budgets tied to those events, even if there could be some incremental increases or whatever percentage increase for having those events. But I think if we had, like, you know how when you do fundraisers and you have a meter out there just saying, okay, well, hey, if you want to contribute to this event, we're at this goal, and we're almost able to, it'll show your success or your failure if you don't get a chance to meet those goals. But long story short, you have some measuring stick out there that they can contribute to for each organization, for each event, and that way it'll give each one of those entities an opportunity to select whichever ones that they want to contribute to for the entire year of events. And so I think that'd be just another option.
And just to add to that, myself and Ms. Lauren had discussed about 6 or 7 events that we thought the city might want to take on next year. And when y'all voted on the ones that's what we was going to do, put earmarks and funds for that, and then we was going to do a sponsorship to try to cover all of that. So that's what was in the plan already. And you will see that earmark of the bills that we're talking about, I guess, in the general fund meeting. You'll see what we're talking about.
Yeah, I if I can take a bit of liberty, Mr. Alexander's in the back of the room, who's worked for a couple corporate entities, and kind of did this for a living in a couple capacities. You mind coming forward and I know you kind of heard the conversation and just give your name and address for the record. So, and then just kind of
Jeremy Alexander, 134 Timber Lane. So two different trains of thought.
check your mic. Is it on?
Two different trains of thoughts. With Georgia Pacific, we obviously had some set objectives that the mayor referenced around the 4 E's: enrichment, environment, education, and I can't even remember what the fourth one is now. That's there you go, economics. So then four of those that we focused our funds on, and their train of thought, I think to Mr. Campbell's point, maybe Rufus's point as well, is that we wanted to make sure we all have limited budgets, especially in this tough economy, but we want to make sure those funds are allocated to where our passions are, right? And what we're trying to enrich the community with. In regards to the corporate, what I would consider a partnership, as opposed to an event sponsor, I think there's probably some validity there when it comes to budgeting. I would only caution that if you look at this overarching, we have a budget, we know what we're going to spend this year. Obviously, the economy can change quickly. I think we've seen that in the last 6 months. I would caution that if things turn around in 6 months, we may want to reconsider reaching back out, because when folks do have times are good, they're more philanthropic, they're more willing to give in those good times than they are when things are tough and they're really having to batten down the hatches. So there may be both, and there may be a time that a corporate event may want to be or a corporate sponsor may want to partner with the city overall and give a large sum of money. Things may turn around, things may slow down, but they may want to sponsor a specific event down the road as well. So I guess my thought would be, as the economy changes, there are probably a couple of different trains of thoughts. During budgeting, yes, it makes it easier, but at the same time, when times are good, people are typically more free with their wallets in their pockets. So I don't know. So I feel strongly both ways, I guess, as Fred Pilgrim would say.
Appreciate it. All right. Any other comments on this issue? Hey. So, moving forward, Ms. Shank.
So we can move forward to the projects. Go back one for me, Sunny. That's okay. So the only notable change that you'll see in the next workshop is that streetscape project. We are anticipating needing additional funding for that. So it will increase from 107,000 to about 500,000 based on our estimates. And then the rest is kind of moving forward and rolling funds from this year that have been lined up with projects and anticipating the SRF payment contribution from the CRA. Any questions on the downtown budget? Okay, so we can.
Hey, if you give me just a second, I'm switching over right now.
Okay.
This is your last switch.
I got a question.
Are you with us?
His last switching, when he switched the plan.
Another reason for the broadband discussion. Rural broadband. Commissioner, are you with us? And that would be no.
We go to rural broadband, his phone won't be compatible. Don't work with,
He's on.
don't work with analog.
Commissioner Ross. We got Mickey Mouse. That's not gonna work, sir. You sound like Mickey Mouse. Can you say something else for us? You may need to log off and log back on. That doesn't sound very, it doesn't sound like your voice, let's put it that way. Never a dull moment.
Is that better?
That's much better. You
Yeah, I don't know why
aged tremendously in like 2 seconds.
it only happens on the Zoom platform for some reason. I'm trying to remember what I was gonna ask. Oh, so if we increase the budget for the hardscape project, what are we doing to mitigate cost increases as time goes on? Because it doesn't look like there's going to be an end to it anytime soon.
I mean, what are the true measures to mitigate these costs when you got so many unknown variables? We experience it every day if you're building anything.
I'm just wondering what, maybe now's not the time to have the conversation, but instead of stopping the project because prices are running on, you know, can it be chopped up in small pieces that we can accomplish and move towards getting it done?
So it's always an option. I think at this point, we've been fortunate enough to be able to supplement to make the project work. And we've dialed back the scope of projects in the past. For example, what we did at the Price Martin, probably the easiest example for the CRA. That project had to be dialed back because of rising costs. And so, Ms. Tucker, you anything you want to add to that?
Yeah, right now that project is out to bid, and when the bids come in, we'll see where we stand and do value engineering as we can. Limited, of course, to the scope that we're required to do for the
grant.
state appropriation grant.
Right.
Okay, my fear would be that we take a look at it and go to award it and then say, well, it just doesn't look like we're gonna have enough money. So have the flexibility to be able to break the scope up into multiple bites if we need to, is all I'm looking for.
The other thing that we've done also is, if it's agency specific, we've gone back to the agencies asking for additional funding to cover the overruns. And so that's been, we've seen that be fruitful in the past as well.
Okay.
Any other questions on projects? Ms. Shank?
Okay, so we're gonna go ahead and move into, we're gonna stay in the downtown area, but we're gonna move into the piece where we actually had our public meeting. And we had residents come in and express the things that they would like to see happen in the downtown district. So I'll let Mandy go over those.
Yes, so we held a noticed public meeting with the residents of the districts on July 7th. In the central, the suggestions were to look into the drainage problem on Laurel Street near the Rotary Park, and sidewalk improvements, especially on St. John's Avenue and Laurel Street, and a partnership between code enforcement and the CRA to have a more active code enforcement presence within the district, and upgrade the trash facilities with more regular maintenance of trash cans, especially on St. John's Avenue. As well as there was one that was suggested for both all three districts, which was making the areas destination sites, doing weekend events or having things such as the amphitheater that is a bigger draw. And those were the ones that were specific to the central district.
So is the Laurel project, does that straddle the central and south line?
Yes, I believe that it depends on which side of Laurel Street you're on. However, that area was included in the COVID sidewalk grant to connect the south to the central.
The 5 million, 5.3.
Yeah.
Okay.
Mhm.
All right. Any other questions based on what you've heard?
I guess I'm a little bit confused, maybe. Are you talking about sidewalks or drainage on Laurel Street out of the TIF fund?
Both. These were suggestions made by residents, and both the sidewalks and the drainage were suggested.
Would drainage fit in the scope of the CRA? In the TIF?
Yes.
Yeah, infrastructure period.
I would just think that that would be more something of a general fund item, but not necessarily a TIF.
It's addressed in statute 163.3 and the plan, infrastructure improvements within the district. We've used district funds before for those projects.
It can be both ways. You can use general or.
Exactly.
Or CRA.
We just deal with such a limited amount of money.
All of it's limited.
Yeah. Yeah. I hear what you're saying. I just don't disagree that it can't be done. I just don't know that it should be used for that that type of project. Because it's not just draining that road. That water comes in from other areas. I personally would think that we'd want to use the money for anything but drainage and those type of improvements. You know, if Laurel Street had to be repaved, would that come out of TIF money?
It would be an expense that could possibly come out of the TIF funding.
Right.
But that's at the pleasure of the board.
It's,
These were just suggestions made by the residents.
Is there any, does the city have any, anything planned for the drainage issues? I mean, I know what they are in that area, but are there any plans right now to address that from the city anyways?
I would need to double check with Mr. Griffith and get back to you on that. Just to make sure. Hold on, I'll see if I can get him to come in.
I can tell you that currently in the proposed budget, that is not something that is slotted in. It's something that, you know, we wanted to bring to the attention of the board that potentially in the future, we could look at it as a project. I think our focus right now is getting through our current projects that we have that are out to bid and actually in construction at this point.
Okay.
Is that something we can bring back for the next budget workshop?
Yes, we can.
So are you, Commissioner, are you okay with us bringing that back to the next budget workshop?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I just wanted to make sure that I was understanding it correctly, because I personally feel like that road services so many other roads, it would be hard to target that. If the TIF had a little bit of involvement in it, I wouldn't have any heartburn on that. But if we said we're just going to start this project out of TIF money only, that would be a big hit.
I don't think that it, in my opinion, I don't think that the TIF would be bearing the entire expense. That's something that we could look at, better place, grants if possible with a TIF contribution. It wouldn't be the bearer of the entire budget.
Would the county not be able to help with that, since that's a feeder road coming off of Krill Avenue?
That's a question for you.
Well, I just asked the question. I mean, it just
Yeah.
makes sense to
I
me,
think-
because if you're coming down Krill, you take that you know, short Laurel and you're right there. And that's a major feeder getting from 20 to 17.
Yeah, it's just
I think-
like asking that DOT to do the same thing. You're gonna run into a logistics nightmare probably from the standpoint of getting a commitment.
Knowing if the board wants to actively engage in this type of project, that's something that we can kind of put on our CIP to look for funding and other contributions.
Yes, so as Ms. Shanks said, there are no capital projects scheduled as of right now for Laurel Street. However, the existing storm inlets are now scheduled to be cleaned with the new vac truck. There is also, and he reminded me, but I believe these are in the South District. The old broken storm inlet tops throughout the districts need to be addressed as
Yeah.
well.
Those would be specific to the CRA. Any other questions? If you need any more detail on that, Commissioner, I guess probably the easiest thing to do is get with Ms. Tucker, Mr. Griffith. And then they can blast something out to everyone once there's an answer.
Okay,
All right, we are,
I think I'm good if we have a workshop on it.
yeah, we're about a minute past our overall scope for this meeting, but we're gonna continue on, and then we'll do our special call soon thereafter for those who logged on just for that special call meeting.
I'll speed up.
No, you're fine. Keep going.
So moving on to the South Historic District, one thing that we accomplished this year was the CRA plan and updates that was completed. We also gave a residential rehab and emergency grant to 418 River Street. And we also did the building improvement grant and allocated $50,000 this year. Whatever isn't spent this year can roll into next year's budget. But if we're looking at, scroll down to the next page for me, Sunny. In next year's budget, we proposed the same amount, the $50,000. And then we increased the allocation for sidewalks. So a trend that you'll see in each of these districts is the new building improvement grant, carrying forward any existing projects that are still underway, and then also allocation for sidewalk repairs, because that is something that was expressed by the residents in that meeting. So we are getting a list together of all the sidewalks and addressing them currently in this fiscal year as well as next fiscal year.
So in South Historic, is it 3,000 for festivals? Was that was, you just put 3,000 in there as a placeholder?
Correct, yeah.
Outside of Porch Fest, are there any other major activities that we're seeing? So. And we know 2,500 is the max of what we're getting.
Right. Well, I thought we had, at one point, I thought we put a maximum of 7,500 for all of the festivals at one point, I think, country.
In each district?
No, just for everything as a whole, I thought.
What we did was on the Class A's, there was a $2,500 grant cap that was put out there at one point. We capped it based upon, we set the criteria and then capped the grant allocation based upon certain, what certain festivals did from a population standpoint or an attendance standpoint. And then, and that's where we kind of move from. It looks like with this number, they're looking at, it looks like anticipation of a Class A and then possibly funding of a smaller festival based on what the number looks like, if I'm guessing correctly.
It can be, in all honesty, I just took whatever amount was budgeted this year and carried it forward. So if it was the wish of the board to reduce or increase, then we could.
I'll just keep it where it's at, I guess.
I got a question regarding the sidewalks.
Yep.
Does the city not have a crew anymore that, they used to have a crew that they would use the prison labor to help doing sidewalk replacement? It was very efficient and affordable. Is that a possibility nowadays with the increase in costs of labor and materials?
A lot of the sidewalks were done in-house last year.
All of them?
A significant portion of the sidewalks were done in-house last year.
Okay,
We took the larger projects out to bid.
okay, cool deal.
And so most of the smaller patchwork was done in-house. And so larger projects like the sports complex was done through bid because it was just a bit more than we could handle internally.
In 2020, the spring of 2020, during the lockdown, we partnered with Public Works and walked the entire South Historic District, marking and measuring all of the sidewalks that needed replacement. And that was part of the figuring for this item.
Sidewalks. I don't see it.
There's 50,000. There's a note. It's actually in the capital outlay
On the first section.
for South Historic.
South, okay.
Just on the bottom part of work. Look to your right.
Oh, okay, okay.
But a
Oh,
trend,
looking for it.
a trend you will see in all of the districts is the new building improvement grant and then a focus on sidewalks because that, like I said, the residents that came forward, that was one of their main concerns.
Yeah, and based on the estimation using current pricing for sidewalk demolition and pouring, 50,000 would take care of about 50% of the sidewalk replacement needed in the South Historic.
Well, the question would be, would they be able to do all of the sidewalks that, say for instance, when you do the allocation in as part of the plan, normally, it normally need to happen during that year. So you think that would be something that they can accomplish within the year?
This budget item was priced out basing a contractor coming in and doing it all at once.
Okay.
It's just to get it done so that it doesn't disrupt this, the residential neighborhood for a long period of time.
Am I correct in understanding, is it 5,000 or 50,000 to do all the sidewalks?
In the South Historic District, the
Yeah.
cost estimate is 50,000 to do half of the sidewalk repair needed in the South Historic District. If we wanted to do it all in the same year, it would need to be closer to $100,000.
Okay. I guess I misunderstood when I read this. So what's allocated is 50,000 for sidewalks. And that's only going to do half of what's in the south side.
That is correct.
So there's what's allocated is 50,000 for capital outlay, where the pleasure of the residents based upon the public meeting is that there be attention to sidewalks. And so the immediate allocation is 5,000 for sidewalks, but you can fund the rest of it.
The 5,000 that I think you're looking at is a line that shows the increase and decrease.
Right. I see. No,
So the entire line is for sidewalks, just so the capital outlay line is just for sidewalks, no other projects.
wow, that seems like a lot of money, $100,000. How many linear feet is that? Do we have any idea?
We take volunteers and donations
I
too.
have a spreadsheet. I can go get that figure for you and bring it right back.
I just, that's a lot of money for just the south side.
I wonder if that includes right in front of Florida Furniture, because I know there's some bad spots in there. Right in the old Florida Furniture where the cold. Cypress, yeah, Cypress. It's a bad,
Yeah.
some bad areas.
Mandy did indicate that they did walk and mark, so I'm sure she has she has a specific list.
Okay, can we step off the sidewalk for a second and keep rolling? You're behind schedule.
Next up is gonna be your South Historic. I know we've kind of touched on the fact that residents wanted to see sidewalk repairs. Let's see if I can read over Mandy's notes. Gas streetlights in the South District being turned on was one resident suggestion, as well as traffic calming on River Street's brick intersection. There is also a level of bricks at the intersection of Kirkland and River Streets, and This resident spoke in favor of underground utilities and a wider bike path on River Street. Another resident also talked about a partnership between code enforcement and the CRA for additional code enforcement activity, sidewalk improvements, sewer cover improvements, investigating the feasibility of underground power lines, reinstalling the granite curbs, and the intersection, which is 5 corners of Laurel, Kirkland, and 7th Streets, should have something nice there to become a better focal point in that area. And maybe some type of program that's a beautification or deferred maintenance for private lawns. And I believe when that resident spoke about that, it was more of kind of trying to think of the word, like a contest, I think. Yeah, okay. You know, for residents to partake in. Another resident also talks about making specific areas a destination site, such as the amphitheater and more weekend events. So there are some specific items that residents requested in there. Main thing, as I said, we focused on was the sidewalk improvements and then also the sewer covers. So
You know, I don't think they need to wait until like budget time to do that. I mean, I think they meet on a regular basis in the CRA districts or whatever. So those are things that, you know, could be brought forward way prior to budgeting time.
I agree with you. The plan calls for us to meet with the different districts as approaching the budget. So it's an additional
Okay.
step. I just want to make sure we covered everything. So in the south, the recommendations were gas streetlights. You read them all?
yeah, I
Okay,
read all
thank
your
you.
highlights.
So thank you. The linear footage total in the South Historic for the sidewalks is 4,343. And I have a spreadsheet that breaks that down by 911 address and the footage at each address. And I'd be more than happy to send that out to the board via email if you'd like.
Yeah, I guess my thought is 50,000 is a lot just to do sidewalks. We need to have some allocation for programs out for some of these other things that are on that wish list besides the sidewalks, so that we don't find ourselves just doing a budget amendment in the middle of the year in case some viable project comes up for the area. So I would say carve out a piece of that. Take 15,000 out of the 50,000 that's specifically for sidewalks and have that, you know, for capital outlay, and sidewalks can be an option for that as well.
Okay.
That's a thought. I think it still allows the district to be able to do what they, you know, what's in place. And if we find that the overwhelming spirit is just to spend it all on sidewalks, and that's fine. But I think we need to look at what we can do. And so I know we can probably do 1,500 off a contract. We can probably do with that amount that's out there, at least, you know, somewhere between 1,500 and 2,000 feet of sidewalk, linear feet of sidewalk. That's 6 feet wide, just based on those numbers, if not more.
Okay.
Are the sidewalks 6 feet wide?
No, but one of the things that we're trending towards wider sidewalks for walkability and for other purposes throughout districts. So it may be an opportunity to do that. It's one of the things that we're doing 8 feet wide sidewalks in downtown in some areas. And in some of the other areas, they're doing walkability at 6 feet.
Okay.
So is any concerns or thoughts on that suggestion?
I think it's a great idea. It can always go back.
Still give options. It still give options. So
Okay. All right. Moving forward.
that was that noted.
Yes, I'm gonna put it in the budget notes in the GL line, so it'll actually be in our system.
So I think that helps us as far as being able to deal with some of the lighting issues, some of the other stuff as well.
Would it be safe to say that strategically the plan right now is over the next 3 years to replace all the sidewalks?
Yep.
Okay.
I think the plan was to do it in 2 years, but we've kind of just pushed it out an extra year. Unless there's a increase in values based on our tax increment that allows us to do more over the next couple of years.
See how that works out.
Thank you for your optimism.
I looked at the Northeast Florida Association of Realtors the other day, and St. Johns County had a decrease from May to June. They had a 5% decrease in home the median income or median home sale price. So you know, that's an indicator.
Yeah, now they're only selling for 500.
Actually, they're still north of 500, but they had a 5% decrease.
It's hard to decrease it when it's on the floor. Next,
On the ceiling.
no, for ours.
Okay, so we can go ahead and move on to the North District. Again, we implemented the building improvement grant and allocated $35,000 this year. Whatever is not spent this year that gets awarded will be rolled into next year's budget, but if it's the wish of the board, we'll continue with the 35,000 built into that budget. No money this year has been spent on sidewalk repairs, so one question I had is if we wanted to keep the allocation of 20,000 for sidewalk repairs next year. And also potentially do some hot asphalt mix in specific areas. So I increased that line by 30,000 and you'll see sidewalks. But my question is if it's the wish of the board to include some specific areas for hot mix asphalt, which is more costly, but it's more durable.
It's the north.
Correct.
Why don't we use some for road leveling over there? We've got some streets over there that are like it's like going on roller coasters. And so if you look at some of the brick streets there, particularly on Bronson from 5th to 2nd to 3rd, it's bad.
It's bad. I've been on there as well.
So why don't we put sidewalk repair at 15 and put some of that and put some more of it towards road repair or leveling, because it's, I mean, you can't travel down some of those streets in North Historic.
And that's the brick stuff too, which should be easily able to be maintenance, right? On those.
I'm
No?
sorry, I'm not sure. I don't know
Yeah,
that.
the way it's set, unless we're gonna come in, because we've already done some potable water over there.
So 15,000 to sidewalks and then allocate 25,000 to looking into Bronson 5th to 3rd.
Let's put 30. We got 50. You're putting 50. At
What's the other 10 for?
Yeah, let's do 35.
Okay, 30.
Well,
What would be the logic of using asphalt over concrete on the sidewalks? I'm just curious.
Asphalt was for roadway.
Okay. I thought you were saying use it in lieu of concrete.
No, two different things. I was referencing in that, and specifically the North District, some of the concerns that we've heard over the year has been sidewalks and also mainly the roadways.
like Mulholland, that area.
Mm-hmm.
So staff, can put more funding into the roadways, if that's the wish of the board.
So yeah, well.
So what was that split again?
Let's do. I'm suggesting 15 and 35.
Okay.
And if estimates come in higher or we want to pick specific roadways, there is still funding in the reserves, estimated about 63,000 in the north. So that's something that, during the budget process, we would come to you for an amendment.
Yeah, I just think our priority north should be getting the road so that they can be traveled on. We've worked on infrastructure, making sure that those roadways are safe.
I agree.
All right. Anything else in north?
For North, we did not have any residents that came to the CRA meeting. But obviously, if anyone in the public does have anything they want to share, they're more than welcome to email in to Mandy Tucker or Jonathan Griffith.
Okay. Anything else, commissioners?
I'm good.
All right. Is that it?
All
So
I have today.
that's it. Next budget workshop. Commissioner Jones?
I don't have anything.
Thank you, sir.
So for citywide budget workshop, utility, we have
Oh.
moved to the next. No.
You're trying to go to the next workshop?
Yeah.
We have
We got a special call in
Oh, I'm
between.
sorry. Listen, I'm in budget mode. I'm
I got you.
ready.
If there's nothing else in this meeting, we will, we'll go ahead and adjourn so that Commissioner Rawls, any comments in closing from the agency, is we'll just ask if anyone has any additional comments at this time.
I have none.
Anybody else? Any comments? If not, we'll wait for when's our next scheduled budget workshop for CRA?
The
I think
21st, sir.
21st, right?
Next week. All right.
Is that at 9 o'clock as well?
No, sir, I believe it's 3. I'm double checking the calendar, but off my top of my head.
Okay, I don't have a time yet on it.
Yes, sir, it's at 3.
It's 3 o'clock, 3 and
1500.
3 and 4:30.
4:30.
Next Wednesday.
Okay. See y'all then.
All right. All right. If there's nothing else, we'll stand adjourned.
Thank you.
Okay, we're gonna move right into the special call and then we'll take a break. Thank you. Special call meeting. Up next. My call. We have a call for this meeting. There is one in the packet.
Commissioners Tammy McCaskill, Will Jones, Commissioner Justin Campbell, and Commissioner Rufus Borum, you're hereby noticed that a special call Palatka City Commission meeting has been called to commence at 9:50 a.m. on July 15th. The purpose of the meeting is to authorize the mayor to sign a grant agreement for the Airport Improvement Program AIP project number 312-0061035-2022. Please govern yourselves accordingly.
Okay, we'll go ahead and call this meeting to order. Roll call, please.
Thank you, sir. Commissioner Tammy McCaskill. Here. Commissioner Will Jones.
He's present online.
Yeah. Commissioner Justin Campbell.
Present.
Commissioner Rufus Borum.
Present.
Mayor Terrell Hill.
Here.
We have a quorum, sir.
Okay, we'll now open the floor for public comments. Everyone here for public comment. Public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. No action will be taken on topics of discussion. Public comment, seeing no one, we'll close public comment. Moving on to the agenda item, adopt resolution 2022 R110. Authorize the mayor to execute a grant agreement.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Resolution of the city of Palatka, Florida, authorizing the mayor and the interim city clerk to execute and attest to Federal Aviation Administration grant agreement for the design and rehabilitation of west taxi lanes and fueling apron, providing for scrivener's errors.
So move.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor and a second. If you look in the top, Mr. McNair, do you want to take this item or is it Ms. Tucker? And I'll just do this since Ms. Tucker just stepped out. One of the purposes, we have the grant agreement in place, is 90% funding. And so that funding comes in amount of $72,234. The reason I brought this forward is so that the commission could go ahead and provide the appropriate approval as we move forward. Are there any questions as it pertains to the grant itself? If not, I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve.
Second.
There's a motion on the floor and a second. We're now open the floor. Public hearing. Is there anyone here for public hearing? Seeing no one, we'll close public hearing. Is there any further discussion on the motion? All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. There are no other items on the agenda at this time. If there's no objection, we will stand adjourned from the special call meeting. 5-minute break, and we will return back for our budget workshop.
just realized we are called to order. For the record, we have Commissioner Tammy McCaskill, Commissioner Will Jones via telecommunications, Justin Campbell, Commissioner Rufus Borum, and Mayor Terrell Hill. We have a quorum, sir.
Moving into our public comments will be limited to 3 minutes. No action will be taken on topics of discussion. Is there anyone here for public comment? Seeing no one, we'll close public comment. We'll move right into our agenda, presentation and discussion of the budget. Ms. Shane.
So this is our first scheduled budget workshop. We did make a change. We are presenting that we're going to move the utility fund to the 7/21 workshop. That does lead that workshop to be very heavy. So if needed, we might need to have another workshop. So we can jump right into my presentation, starting off with reserve history. So general fund reserves has seen a significant increase over the years, which is in part to staff decreasing spending as they can. When we ended fiscal year 2021, the general fund balance at the time was $8,676,000. I believe part of that balance is the ARPA funding that we received, the 2.5, because that was initially deposited into general fund. So in my projection, I actually took out the ARPA funding, so you won't see that in your reserve balance. Moving on to general fund obligations. At this time, these were the items that I could think in specifically that we have coming up next year that we need to consider in our budget cycle. One being the Palatka Pride contract with PBM, which estimated we're slotting $50,000 into that department. Up to 6% increase on health insurance. 800 megahertz radios. It's my recollection that commission was in agreement to move that to ARPA funding. So
So let me stop you right there. So I guess the question for the commission is, we discussed this during the workshop at the Price Martin Center to go ahead and pay for the radios for law enforcement. And so we haven't officially approved it, but it seemed to be consensus at the time. So I just want to make sure that we're all still on the same page as it relates to the radios.
What we did the radios for the we did 330 for the
That was in packs.
the back
SCBA.
pack.
Those are the
Okay,
packs.
okay, with 330 for the packs. Okay,
It was for air packs.
okay.
And the 530 was basically held out and set aside for the radios based on the conversations that we have with the commission. Everybody's on board. Is everybody on board with that?
Yeah.
Okay. Commissioner Jones?
Yes, yes.
What about the number one item? It said 50,000, but I thought the mayor mentioned the 45 because they wanted 80 or something, and we got it down to 45. So is there an additional 5,000 added to it, or what happened? When
I don't think
we-
it was an additional 5.
we
Mayor.
voted on
Commissioner.
45.
Yeah.
Mr. Holmes, did you want to speak on that?
Well, we put a bit of a contingency fund in there because, for one, they've come back and asked for some additional improvements to the boat based upon the charter captain's assessment of its needs. And actually, we also just built in a little bit of an overlap there. We have, as you probably already know, we've started incurring storage charges on the boat. And so, rather than running ourselves short on the budget, we just went ahead and put it at 50.
So let's break it down to the 45 for the contract and then do a contingency.
Okay, sure. Yeah, you're correct though when you state that the mayor has suggested actually negotiated down from 60 to 45. That's entirely accurate.
Okay, so we'll just have that contingency there just for, just in case there are some unforeseen repairs or anything. Or the
Great.
weight distribution changes. So,
Moving on to decision units. Same procedures last year, anything above and beyond current budget for a department. I have asked them to put a decision unit forward. You will see departments on here that are not being presented today, but I wanted to make sure that you had a running list of every decision unit that was out there. A majority of the decision unit is facility repairs. So one thing I can say is that if it's the wish of the commission, we could take the ARPA funding that we're gonna use for the radios, and that 521,000 that we budgeted in this year, we could allocate that to facility repairs. I understand that we don't have a specific plan of, the future of, for instance, the annex building. However, that roof is actively leaking, as well as the back room is flooding. And for the sake of our records in that building and our employees, that's something that I feel should be addressed.
Okay, so we can take part of that 521,000 and address the roof issue over there.
Correct.
Is it 530 or
521.
521.
I think the
That's
other,
in this year's budget, Commissioner. We budgeted 521,000 this year. Estimated so far on radios, the update we got was 530,000. So
Okay.
that's what we're proposing, the ARPA expense.
So
be moved up to.
9,000 less. Yeah.
I think the other thing we gotta do is have an allocation for, we gotta come up with our records keeping plan. There hasn't been a records keeping plan in place. We've got records that go back to the 1800s. And some of those records need to be stored differently than they are. We're not in compliance from that standpoint. And so it may be necessary for us, prior to get those records put in a safe place. We got Civil War records, all kind of stuff that's floating around here, and it needs to be put in a very different place. And I'm sure from clerk school, you've kind of learned what some of those standards are, as well as having that stuff put in electronically. And so I think we need to start allocating some resources to updating an allocation. So I would suggest putting at least 25,000 in place, having conversations with some of the local universities to see if it's something that they can help us with as far as archiving. And then that'll at least give us, if we need to get a storage facility or whatever it may be in the interim while we're building public works, which I think has some built-in storage, it'll give us great opportunity.
I agree. That's been something that we've identified for quite a few years now. And I think it's absolute time to move forth with that. Definitely with the records that we have, again, with retention, it's something that we should move on.
Let's pull that from that 521 as well.
Question. Well, how did that project ever stop? Because that was something that we had when Betsy was interim, and
It never started. It didn't stop. It never started. We
talked about it.
We prioritized it, but we prioritized it, but as that transition and all that other stuff took place, it was never something that was put into place when you transition from having the assistant clerk, who was also the secretary of city manager at the time, because if you remember, she actually was set aside for records keeping. The clerk wasn't doing the records keeping portion because she was the records keeping professional. And then it never, ever, what the commission's mandate was, never came to fruition. And so that plan was never completed. And that's one of the things that me and Ms. Krantz have been talking about as she continues to go through the stuff with her school. And she's seeing those deficits, and there just hasn't been a budget allocated to specifically do those, and been a request from the clerk's office.
Because I was just thinking about certain filings that, need to be from, I guess, a state mandate filing, which you have to
Yeah.
need to be into your records in terms of.
Well, the bigger nightmare is when someone requests documents, let's say from a housing perspective, and they're looking for older documents, and it becomes a shuffle and bringing additional people in to try to locate those items that we can start to archive and catalog in a different way, because they predate all of us.
So we doing what, 25,000?
I think it's a starting point. It gives the ability to develop a plan to seek out, and if nothing else, to create alternative condition storage.
So we're supposed to be working with one of the schools and then the historic society with, what's his name, Mr. Larry Beat.
Yeah, we talked about Mr. Beaton, we talked about the Library of Congress, and we talked about University of Florida.
Okay.
But I think this is the perfect time for us to start to push forward on those things, with ARPA freeing up some resources.
All right, that'll work. And
So you will see a bulk of the community affairs. The first two, we will go in more detail whenever we go over those budgets. But mainly the facility repairs, which, once we go over community affairs, we'll touch on those specific decision units. Today, we are only going over commission and city manager and planning and zoning that have decision units. So I'll just touch on those quickly. City manager has a PIO, or a public information officer / marketing media manager position. And then we put the assistant city manager on a decision unit. That is a current position that's funded in this year. However, we're moving it to a decision unit for next year. And at the request of commission, we also put the recruiter for city manager on here as a decision unit. I know it's something that we all don't really want to talk about, but Mr. Holmes will be departing us next year. So I think it's imperative that we really think about planning for the future. Planning and zoning has a comp plan update. That's 75,000 that they are asking to do that update. And then commission request, a commission program slotted at $75,000. Mr. Holmes, the 75,000 commission program.
I requested that 75 be set aside so that we can look at potential programs. You remember last time we actually had 5,000 or so allocated. So one of the things we looked at is the potential. We just basically put a placeholder in place for the commission. It allows us to look at whether we need staffing, part-time staff to deal with some of the needs of the commission. It allows you to be able to look at where we are from expensing, where you are from programming. And so we put that number in place so that would give us at least the option to look at how we can allocate some resources towards that and have a greater conversation.
So listed it as a placeholder just so we can keep that on our running list. We can jump over to the property appraiser results. You can skip that one. So as a result of the valuations that came in on July 1st, I took the liberty of basically giving a chart to the commission so that as we work through the budget process with general fund, you're able to look at, if you were to keep a flat millage of 6.4, you would produce an additional 244,000 in new revenue. And from there, I kind of tapered it down all the way to a 7.4, which is a 1 mil increase. So just numbers there for you to think about as we go through the budgeting process of what staff is proposing and what our needs are going to be. Are there any questions about this chart? So the first one we're going to go through is the commission budget. It's in your email. I'll go ahead and just start talking. So.
Can you,
as a-
can you, can you possibly put it up on the screen?
Okay. So as a whole, we are proposing a 5% increase to salaries, and we also cut the intern budget at 20,000. The overall increase for commission budget is about 24,000, and that is really attributed to the professional services line. Our lobbyist, whenever we committed to the new firm this year, it's carrying forward into next year. So that's the increase that you're seeing. We kept the special events for each commissioner, for you to do your community events. That is still built in the budget. And we also made sure we aligned additional costs for travel. So we gave an extra $300 to each commissioner travel for schooling and conference, just to account for inflation. Any questions?
Never mind. I really can't see the,
Is there any way we can, you have a copy? We can get
Yeah.
copies of that?
Yeah, 1 second.
Bringing some of those keys to swim this afternoon? Are you bringing some of those keys from town to swim this afternoon with the mayor? With the commissioner?
I'll wait and I get a copy.
You know. Oh, you put 6,000. I think it went to 6,300. It went to,
And commissioners, that is partly on me. I did ask, due to the rising costs of travel and the fact that some of the Florida League of Cities meetings are now going to be in like Hollywood and areas in the southern part of Florida. I asked for, due to the increased cost of gas, that a little bit more be added to hence the 6,300.
Thank you. Thank you, much appreciated.
I think that a little more than 300 need to be added.
yeah. I agree.
I mean, when you think about it.
It didn't.
When you think about it, the local, well, majority of us serve on boards that's on the Florida level. So of course, we're not trying to drain, but that's where a lot of our relationships are built and formed. And that's where we get a lot of the knowledge that we do have. That's just something to take.
Yeah.
I agree. But I have to do additional travel prior to a lot of our meetings and conferences, the board members, so.
Yeah, if you look at I guess the only thing is if you look at where we spent, and I think that was due to a lot of that stuff being virtual. True. Or 11:30. 11:30 is what you said. All right. All right, let's just. You already have it. It's already in your email. Yeah, it was. I almost said something.
What? Don't do it. Just that it was highlighted. He's showing. You didn't have-
I can still hot. All right. I take it we never adjourned, so we never took a break, so we've still been live.
So just as a first glance, I'm gonna go back and check that top salary line, because it looks like my formula probably didn't calculate correctly. I know there's not an $80,000 increase to commissioner salaries.
Well, it's in there now.
It is, it's a formula, so I will say I'm sorry.
Don't
I didn't
apologize
catch
if it
that.
But it's in
But
there.
as a whole, we are proposing a 5% increase across the board. I have been monitoring what other agencies are doing. Some already have a merit program, some are going off of the current CPI, which May to June, I believe, was 9%. So I've seen anyone going from a COLA of 4% all the way up to 10%. And some are just staggering it. So we kind of went in the middle and proposed a 5.
I saw a stagger 4 + 3
Mhm.
in Daytona. And so they did it in two hits.
Yeah, and if it's the wish of the commission, I can model out different scenarios. You would just need to advise me what you'd like to see.
Model out.
I think the other thing is also model out the compliance, because the 26, I mean, the minimum wage compliance area won't be realistic. It will be way above that with what we're seeing on the trends of salaries right now.
Mhm.
15 was supposed to be the floor, but you're gonna see closer to 20 being the floor at some point in the next few years. And if we don't, and we got to figure out how to get there to stay competitive, because I'll give you an example. We increased law enforcement salaries to 41,000 as a base. Cities like Daytona, they got a lot more money and they got a lot more officers, but they just jumped up to 50, and now they're doing a 4 and a 3 behind it. And so the sheriff's office is getting a 10% bump across the board. You're seeing it in every area, fire, the works. And so, we got our salary study in place. We've got some leverage as far as, we kind of kept in the middle of the road on the ranges, but we got to come up with a long-term plan. I think that has to be a commission workshop sooner than later as to how we transition and set money aside to do so. So, but it's a conversation for another day, not for this one.
Yep. Okay, so we can move out of commission and move on to city manager if you don't have any other questions.
Yeah, so you're just gonna take out the 80?
I'm not gonna take out the 80, but I am gonna check that formula. I'm sorry. It should only be calculating 5%.
Leave it there as a placeholder.
Next up, we have city manager. Oh,
Before we move forward, excuse me,
That's Commissioner Jones.
yes,
Yes, sir.
before we move forward, Ms. Shanks, could you actually see what the increase would be? We know it won't be 80,000. If you use the 9% increase, when you come back for the next workshop, so we'll have that number just.
So what the 5% COLA would be?
You guys,
You're breaking up a little bit, so that's why I'm asking.
Got Commissioner Rose playing.
I think he said 9%, what the 9% COLA would be.
Nine? I thought he said 5. I thought he's 9.
10-9?
I heard 9
see what
also.
9%, yeah.
okay.
You want 9% COLA?
Said
And we can do that.
I said 9. I could be.
We can't. Your signal is really bad. Can you say something else so we can see if it's clear enough?
Can you put it in the chat, Mayor? Like text chat.
Can you type
I'm
it?
traveling. I'm traveling.
That's better. That's better. What's your percentage? Was it 5 or 9?
I said 9.
Okay, because it broke up. We couldn't tell whether it was 5 or 9.
It's clear.
Okay.
Okay.
City manager, you will see a decrease of the 90,000 for assistant city manager. That has been moved to a decision unit. And then also the decrease for Westlaw, that we are moving over to the attorney's budget instead of splitting it between the departments next fiscal year. It's no impact. It just makes it easier so that expense is allocated to one department.
Can you put that up on the screen? My screen doesn't show city manager budget right now.
Blow it up. Just blow that department up. It's the second tier.
John, this is the same from your email yesterday, if that helps. And you'll see reports behind them. So as I'm inserting budget notes, I'm trying to make sure that I include those. So instead of seeing lump sum items, the commission sees the details and notes behind them.
So why'd you decrease the assistant city manager?
That was at the request of the city manager. So Mr. Holmes, do you want to speak?
So repeat that again. What happened there? We decreased.
So I understood of course, I still don't understand the breakdown here.
You are where it says personnel services,
right.
City manager's office department is right on the second line. Are you with us?
Okay, I did. I'm sorry. Okay. Yeah, I thought we had 100,000 as the decision unit on the assistant city manager. I thought we just talked about that a minute ago.
No.
Well, it was on that.
It was on that original decision unit sheet.
That was on the presentation.
Yep.
Correct. So decision units are not built into the budget. So those are items for the commission to take into consideration and approve or not approve. So I apologize if that wasn't your intent.
I understand that, but you got 90,000 decision unit here at item 2, and we had 100,000 at item as a decision unit on the assistant city manager in that first display that you had advertised. I think 100 is probably more appropriate.
Correct, and that's what's on the decision unit. The 90,000 is because this fiscal year it was budgeted at 90,000.
Okay, I'm sorry. I didn't understand that.
That's okay.
I'd like to see it remain in the budget.
So all of these are not
Built into the budget, correct.
They're not in the budget. Okay.
Yeah, they're based
Decision units are not built into the budget. That's correct. So if it's consent, then I can move that back into the budget.
So would it be, if we did all decision units, it'd be 1 million
Correct.
54.
Some of those, looking back at the decision units, that is correct. It's in excess of $1 million, but most of it is facility repairs in the community affairs department. So if you move that ARPA reserve to that, they are one-time expenses. So it's not that you would need to increase your millage to cover that 1 million because they're not ongoing, they're one time. So, and we can go into that more detail once we get to community affairs budget.
So what do y'all want to do with ACM? With the assistant city manager? Do we want to leave that 90,000 in for assistant city, with 100,000 is what the city manager was saying is the decision unit?
Okay. Mhm.
Commissioner Campbell, Commissioner Borum, Commissioner Jones.
Yes, I mean, if other cities have assistants. So
What does city?
I think that's appropriate.
Commissioner Jones.
Well, I would like to know the duties of an assistant city manager, because we also allocated other funds for PIO and a media person, and I want to know the duties and responsibilities of an assistant city manager to justify that type of salary. Maybe it's been discussed before, but I would like to see that, to know, and I think it's good information to have. Also, going in to, as Ms. Shank said, hiring a new city manager.
Tonight.
I'm sorry, and basically see exactly what it's going to take to get us a city manager. It actually may mean that we must use more money to get a city manager. So, that's something to consider prior to hiring an assistant city manager, if we only have half a year to make that happen. So that's just something to consider. Also considering a city our size and population, do they actually operate with an assistant city manager as well?
Well, I think everybody's trending. I mean, one of the things that you talk about as well is succession planning and no longer having one person departments. I think so that's part of the piece. But most cities our size don't have airports. Their utilities aren't to the extent that ours are. They don't have some of the resources that we have in a 10,000 person city. I think Palatka's in a unique position based on size, on what we've seen trending around the state. But again, we still have one person departments. And at the end of the day, God forbid, if something happened to the city manager, you find yourself scrambling for the next man up. And you place the burden on existing staff to double dip in essence, and really almost volunteer for those positions while you within internal, or you go to, or as we've done in the past, you're going to senior advisors to come in temporarily to put a Band-Aid on something that if we plan properly, we've got it fixed in-house.
I think what it would also allow you to do is allocate supervision over departments, certain departments, with the city manager retaining certain departments and an assistant city manager retaining others, which might provide for a more efficient operation from your department heads, and maybe a little bit more effective interchange and supervision of the various different departments you have. As the mayor indicated, you're ranging from airports to streets, to, of course, Public Works, to on and on, cultural affairs, planning. And I think that planning function is going to be, as you see what we're beginning to see in Palatka, what's projected for Palatka, I think that there probably is going to be a need for more time spent in communication with the planning director about some of the things that you're seeing, some of the needs that you're seeing. So added to what the mayor said, succession plan and so forth, just a thought that you might be able to generate a more efficient allocation of supervisory responsibilities if you had an assistant city manager in place.
Any comments, additional comments? Commissioner Jones?
Pardon my interruptions. I'm actually traveling, so I have intermittent
I'll take a burger.
disruption, and I won't interrupt again. And maybe I have other comments when I'm present, but I can hear some.
It's not an interruption, Commissioner, at all. I think the commentary is good. Any other comments from the commission?
I just think, adding the assistant city manager does provide for business continuity, but having that, I think entertaining marketing media manager might be not something that we would need so much. I would guess at that point, but it's just my opinion.
And that's something we can decide towards the end. So I'll go ahead and add back the assistant city manager into the budget. We can move on to city clerk.
Okay.
City clerk, there weren't any significant changes in this budget. Everything pretty much stayed status quo. A little increase in schooling, which is going to be normal across all the departments.
We can move that 25 into file retention there.
Yes, I made a note to leave it in there. And I'll slot it into professional services. And moving on to legal. Another, I'm sorry, general admin. We have two general admin and government services departments. And these are kind of miscellaneous that don't really fall within a specific department. So you've got postage, city hall. We had the, phone upgrades this year. Postage, Sassines, copiers, building updates and security, that was ramped up a little bit. So we moved from the 17.5 to 30,000 in hopes to address concerns that we have in regards to cameras and other types of security. And that was really the only notable change. So moving on to the next, government services.
One second on,
Yeah.
we was at the city clerk deal. Okay.
No, it was general admin.
You want to go back there?
Well, no, I just seen customer service representative
Oh, okay.
in there.
Yeah, go back
Um,
to city clerk.
And do we have a customer service person? Because
That position is currently vacant.
Yeah.
we struggle citywide with customer service from end to end things going in. We struggle when things go in the system, whatever it may be. Sometimes it goes into a black hole. And I guess whoever put in those cases or work orders, work requests, sometimes they're not communicated back to whether the status is complete or whatever the state is, what's the next step. So I think it's really important that we develop something in-house that we provide those services to the community. I've heard from a number of people, so so I just wanted to look at, and I sent that in last year. Let's see what we can do from a customer service standpoint.
This position in particular is at City Hall, and it is for really the influx of calls and questions that we get to make sure they're being directed to the correct department, as well as alleviating the city clerk so that she can perform, you know, the actual duties that need to get done. And
It's the gatekeeper.
yeah,
And so what happened, and so if you look at what we've got in City Hall right now, access on a daily basis, you've got 5 people who are sitting in the lobby area because of lack of room, because you don't have office space or room allocated for them based upon certain things. If you have a gatekeeper, then what that does is it gets rid of some of the interruptions that come from basic questions that can be redirected to someone else, and it allows for greater efficiencies with your clerk, with your permitting clerk, with your planner, with your planning clerk, all those different places. You'll get greater efficiencies because the telephone and walk-ins always, and it's walk-ins for simple questions that can be handled with the person who's equipped to be able to do it with the basic knowledge of all departments and who handles what. It'll change the day for Ms. Krantz or even for Ms. Neely as they move forward, because they find themselves saying, hey, go to the police department, go to the airport for this, or go to the county for a permit, and then not counting folks who just come in who need direction somewhere. And so if you got a gatekeeper, then it allows us to be more efficient. The phone doesn't ring and no one answers. You've got someone there and that's their job. And it changes the way we handle services overall. And then they can always go back into the system and enter if there's a work order or something that needs to be put in place for a specific location.
That's spot on. I mean, that's spot on. And that's what we need to.
It was filled briefly. It didn't last long. And so we've got that's a position I think that's critical to operation. And I think you're absolutely right, Commissioner. So moving on.
legal. I kept a flat amount for the contracted services for legal. That is another sad topic to talk about, but Ms. Thomas's contract will be expiring in this fiscal year coming up.
Ms. Thomas, she's actually trying to retire. Council's trying to retire.
Again.
We appreciate you unretiring for a little bit, but I think it brings a good conversation for us and food for thought as we move forward. You've got the city manager and the city attorney who are both leaving in the next 6 to 9 months, both of them, and we need to start thinking about succession planning.
Correct.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think that's the point. And so
if you would, for the headhunter, does the headhunter is it only inclusive of the city manager, or is it also inclusive of the both city manager and attorney?
It was only for city manager, and I got preliminary quotes just to try to put a number on that decision unit. For the finance director, I believe we paid between 16 and 17,000. So city manager, based on the quotes that I got, were around 30,000, which we would have to go out to RFP for that. So during that process, we could outline that we would like that executive recruiter to look for a city attorney as well. So we could do that in that process.
If I could, though, the question is going to be whether you go with a full-time attorney or a part-time. Going out with a headhunter for a part-time attorney is probably going to be I'm sorry?
A waste.
Exactly. So just again, as the mayor indicated, food for thought. If you're going to go with part-time, a headhunter is going to be of limited value to you, because you're going to be trying to, a part-time attorney is probably just going to be drawing from the local area. And that population of attorneys who would be willing and able and to do that is going to be limited enough so that I doubt you need a $15,000 headhunter for that. If you're going to go full-time now, that's something different.
It's a game changer. And the number goes up significantly.
Exactly.
Because you're going to build out an entire department. So if you going away from a contract attorney, you're now having to bring in support staff and other and other costs that I think, quite frankly, will quadruple your budget.
Exactly. And in spite of what Mr. Holmes says, I am a full-time attorney that is on contract. I'm just not in the office full-time, but to get a full-time attorney, you need support staff. What I wanted to bring up was, I think I sent you an email, Ms. Shank, was about the fines and fees. There's increased number of litigation that's going on from the city attorney's office that needs to be funded.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you have like fines and fees or something like $1,000. I think that's for court costs, but that's totally an insufficient number. With filing fees of like $400 and with service, process service fees, it's like a $500 each case just to file a case.
Yeah, and I totally agree. I think that number is probably close to $800 by the time you file, acquire service and process. If it's a foreclosure, you also have to build title work into that, or for instance, a nuisance abatement. So I totally agree. And Ms. Thomas said, forgive my slip of tongue. You're right. Full-time attorney on contract.
So, and the other part is you also end up typically, when you're dealing with contract attorneys, you end up with, outside of that contract, separate costs for litigation, which is kind of what we had initially with Mr. Holmes before he took on that position in a different, with the benefit aspect of it changing in order for us to create some cost savings. But you typically end up with litigation costs being a separate contracted item, and the rates on that are different, unless you raise your monthly and build it in some other kind of way. Because you never know how long litigation is going to last. We find ourselves in that litigation with the boats. It's been, what, a decade? And so those things you can't calculate it, so you can't logically expect it to happen. I think the reality is we got Ms. Thomas on a coupon for a lot of stuff, and we've had the luxury of having a city manager who's an attorney as well, who was the prior city attorney, who sometimes becomes the active city attorney. But it works out because you end up with a wealth of legal knowledge sitting inside of the room, which kind of spoils you based on cost of what you end up with.
So, Ms. Thomas, would you think, and I realize this is a huge difference, but with the code enforcement activities that we've even most recently discussed, the foreclosures, the nuisance abatement, would you think that, I would say your fines and fees, I don't know what fines is really, but fees I think is probably more appropriate for that category. I was thinking $10,000 to $15,000 for fees.
Correct. I sent, like I said, an email to Ms. Shank yesterday when I saw this, that we should at least start out with 5, but I agree, 10 to 15 is more realistic.
Okay, so I'll make sure that I slot in legal claims in your budget, Ms. Thomas.
Not legal claims, that's fees, that's her filing fees.
Sorry.
So that's like your filing fees, your process serving, depositions, whatever. But then you got, as it relates to litigation costs, that's an entirely different, ballgame. And so I'm thinking you're going to look at $25,000 or so, probably look at the litigation costs because of what we're doing actively with code enforcement, some of this other stuff. The typical cost you get $1,000 to $1,500 to run one of those code cases through at a minimum. You're doing evictions and some of those other things that we've done. Those are typically costs that are associated in addition to what you get on a normal basis, unless you depends on how you write your contracts up. And so in-court services come at an hourly rate for the attorney. And it's a negotiable rate, but you know, any attorney who's worth anything is gonna be a few $100 at a minimum. You know, you're gonna spend 300 to 350 for in-court services on most attorneys. It may be different on the government's side with a contract, but those are pretty standard. Would you agree, Mr. Holmes?
Yes, sir, I would.
And if you got one that's got 40 years experience, the price may be higher.
It sounds like I need a full-time attorney.
Well, no, you can't afford it.
You can't afford it.
You can't afford a full-time attorney.
And
That's the
as
honest
the mayor,
answer.
right, as the mayor said, you guys got me on the coupon, which I have not billed that or even included that in my contract separately for in-court appearances.
Yeah, but we can't afford, with our budget the way it is right now, we can't afford a full-time legal department. One, we can't house them. Secondly, it builds out additional staffing and support. And so it's a whole different game. I think the best way for us to approach it is to go back and look at where we were when Mr. Holmes when Mr. Holmes was city attorney, and look at what we did from a budgeting standpoint. I think during those times we put anywhere from $90,000 to $100,000 in place for salaries and also for litigation costs. And we still were getting, we still got work that wasn't billed out in the same manner that people would typically bill.
Mr. Mayor, also I want to compliment Ms. Krantz as a part of this entire legal services and legal department, because she was a certified paralegal. She has assisted me as that support, as well as being the clerk and being the support for Mr. Holmes. So I just wanted to do a shout out for her, but that would be also something that you would need to consider and think about if you wanted to have somebody contract in-house, or I agree, the situation with Mr. Holmes, or the relationship that Mr. Holmes had as a the council would be a better financially for the city.
Yeah. So can we next week come back and revisit these numbers, updated after you get together, and go from there? And I guess the three of you can get together and y'all can kind of talk about what a realistic number looks like.
Yes, sir.
Any questions? We can move forward. Any comments from the commission after hearing that? We got 12 minutes, Commissioner. Ms. Krantz.
Finance is next. I did make a few adjustments to operating supplies as our printing has seemed to have gone up. And then also for the FGFO training, I slotted for an additional staff member to go due to promotions internally. I want to make sure that the staff that we have in our finance department is trained up.
You can't build increases into your own budget.
Less than everyone else. Actually, I actually decreased my FGFOA training and instead put in for NIGP training, which is purchasing training, and because of COVID, they're still doing webinars, so there aren't any travel expenses with that. So I decreased it by 1,000. If I allot 2,000 to each employee, there are 5 employees, it should be 10,000, but I took 1,000 off because I decreased my FGFOA. Third-year contract for HCTR auditors. So I just made a note of that. And there really aren't that many changes. If you have any questions. If not, we can move on to HR. HR, a notable addition is going to be the Leadership Academy. We are proposing that we do the Leadership Academy again next year. This current year, we paid $10,000 and that was for 25 staff members. And then you're also going to see an increase in the advertisements. Historically, they are split among every single department for the advertisements. So what myself and Ms. Jones decided to do was rope it all into one, because really she controls those advertisements. So in essence, she's watching what she's spending.
So let me ask this question. So it's 25 in general. If 25 doesn't show, does the price decrease, or are we paying for the 25 overall?
It's overall, it's a contracted price.
So if
So
individuals who are slated to go don't go, we're just out of that funding.
correct. So last year, whenever we found ourselves in the Leadership Academy and we had open slots, we took people that showed interest. Those people will actually go into next year's Leadership Academy because they didn't get the full training.
We slotted 25 based upon department head suggestions at our own discretion. When some of those people did not either show an interest in coming, or in the midst of that, we lost multiple people, including the Public Works Director, Mr. Ladd, Mr. Pearson, a couple of others. We went ahead and basically asked new people to come on in, but they didn't get the full benefit of the training because some of those people stopped coming or left the city midway through the process. So we tried to put people back in the slots, but again, they did not get the full benefit of the entire process because of joining midstream.
And that's one semester. So 12 weeks. Any questions on HR?
So, yeah, I got a question. We're looking at, so we're looking to bring in another person in to HR?
That's correct.
An HR
That's
director?
that's correct, sir. That's my suggestion. The HR department is obviously more than a one-person department, and so I believe that we benefit if you think about all the functions that the HR is being asked to do with our personnel, 150 people. I believe we'd benefit with an HR director in addition to the HR generalist that we have now.
I don't know what 74,000 is gonna get you. I think the other piece of it is you're gonna end up with 2 executives and no staff again. So you don't have any clerical that's based upon what you have in place. And then on the other side of it, we got 6,500 in employment advertisement. Doesn't look like we have anything in recruitment. I know we've got significant turnover and difficulty finding people in all of these different places. I think Ms. Jones has been very creative in some of the job fairs and some of the other stuff that we put in place to try to attract people. But the PD, for example, how many are you down now?
6, I believe, unless and there may be.
Just show me by fingers. Yeah, he's 9. So you're on 2 hands there. You're talking, and so in order to, so we need to look at what do we do, commission citywide for recruitment, retention, all these different things, so that we can kind of stop the bleeding as it relates to finding people on these jobs. Fire department's down, everybody's down, and it's not going to change because they're throwing more money out into this pot. You start throwing more of the stimulus money and more of this other stuff out there, you've experienced it full hand. And I just think that we've got to look at putting something in place so that, one, as we recruit, we can get to, because a lot of it's been done through social media at this point and newspaper. I think we've got to be able to go to some of these colleges or go to some of these trade schools and be able to say, hey, we're offering jobs on site. And this is what we're doing in order for us to get, a workforce in place, which lines up with with the vision, and it puts us in a position where we're not currently onboarding and spending money because people are, at the end of the day, we're being outbidded by other agencies. And so it's a hard thing to predict or a hard thing to resolve. I know it's been a nightmare for these last couple of years, literally trying to weather the storm of the pandemic and the new trends and what's going on in the workforce. But we got to do something.
Well, this is not a short term, but I feel that I know that if we grasp our youth, or those that are coming up of age to getting close to like graduation and things, those are things that we possibly could do if we have those programs up and running that will capture the youth early, and we know that we have them invested, go through the proper channels. And I think that's just one way that we'll be able, that was one of my ideas with the internship, is to try to capture these students at an early age, early enough to say, hey, if you desire to be here, this is an opportunity for you, and carry it out. I mean, I don't think it's far-fetched that if we bring that back to the table, that's something that could possibly help us curve. Like I said, it's not an immediate resolution, but it's definitely a resolution in the years to come.
I think you have to do that. You have to do all of it. I think you can't just do one. And I think that's the thing.
Right.
With 6,500, you're limited on what you can do. And the newspaper's going to take most of that. And the rest of it, you can't, and we just can't continue to rely on Facebook and not have a budget in place for recruitment.
Well, I totally agree that you have to use every tool in the toolbox. Ms. Jones and I have had recent discussions so that we've expanded our attempts to advertise our positions from just using the government sites and the city site. We've branched out to everything from Indeed to LinkedIn, actually, in recent times, to try to get additional applications. We're not getting a lot of applications in some of the positions that we're advertising now. I agree with you completely. Everything. I mean, I think that this is a time when when no effort is one that's a bad effort. You try it all. We've tried the programs in school. The fire chief can explain to you what our success rate has been with the program in school. Hasn't been very good. Even though we've offered scholarships at both fire and police. And there probably are a myriad of reasons why, but I don't know that that's a reason to stop. I'm not saying it's a reason to stop. I think it's more in line with what the mayor's saying, and that is, I think in this time you just about have to try everything. We're at a competitive disadvantage despite the salary study. You can talk to both. The mayor indicated what Daytona's paying for police officers. We're in union negotiations right now. So believe me, I'm hearing what other people are paying for fire salaries. So you're at a little bit of a competitive disadvantage on salaries right now. So I think anything you can do that's imaginative to try to attract is worth trying. So I agree. I'm not disagreeing at all.
Well, just in addition to what the mayor has stated with recruitment, I would strongly suggest that we look into job fairs. I know we did one locally, but job fairs that are occurring in some of our neighboring communities, being a part of those to advertise what it is that we do have here. While we want a strong effort of what we have here, but again, there may be some people on the outskirts of Palatka that follows various job fairs that we may want to take in consideration, partnering with them. I mean, I don't think it'll hurt anything by being in another place trying to recruit people to come to Palatka.
Yeah, nor do I.
I agree. I think having that additional person will help with that too, because you have the day-to-day going on. So sometimes it's hard to step away to those job fairs. And Ms. Jones does the best she can, but definitely having another person is going to help.
Yeah. And two, I don't think we're losing staff just per se, all because of salaries, in my opinion. And when people are leaving, do we do like exit interviews to see why they're leaving, and maybe get some feedback along those lines? Because I can guarantee you it's not all salaries, and I think that the city's salary is in line with most other cities. I mean, we've looked at it. Are we not?
I think it has a lot to do with the different departments, various reasons maybe within different departments, but a lot of it does dwindle down to finances.
I think
And
what's,
the job responsibilities that come.
We're
with
looking
it.
at overall, we looked at overall salaries and benefits along everything. So if I'm wrong, how much are we all just? in general? Somebody.
It's such a fluid environment, we're in unseen times. You don't have to do anything but watch the TV to see that Waste Pro in Jacksonville is not providing some services right now because they're saying they're 25 drivers short or whatever. They're paying a $5,000 sign-on bonus right now, plus wages that are in excess of ours. Yeah, we do try to do exit interviews. And matter of fact, recently I went down and just sat down with everybody in the sanitation department, just in an informal setting, and said, what's you tell me the biggest thing that you think is a problem right now with employment. And the one word was money, money, money. So I don't disagree with anything that's being said. It's probably not just a single issue matter, but yeah, I think the salary survey was great, but remember, we were dealing with historical data, and we all know what's happened over the last few months.
Right, and that's a good point. But also too, you made a excellent statement when you said that they were giving 5,000 sign-on bonus for new employees. But look at what that does to your people who have been with you for long tenure employees. And so you got somebody who's coming in fresh off the streets, and they're getting sign-on bonuses. And when you got people who have not been given raises for years, and I can understand why that would be some turnover.
No, that's in Jack. I wasn't talking about us. I was talking about Waste Pro.
No, I'm just
right now trying to attract drivers.
Right, but I'm saying that that's the model that's out there. I'm not saying that the city of Palatka is doing it, but I'm just saying that's the model that's out there, and we can't compete with that. So when we do offer those things, you got people who've been with you 5, 10, 15, 20 years, and you getting somebody who's coming on with a $5,000 or $10,000 sign-on bonus. I see why it would be some major turnover in different jobs. So we have to look at all those different things, and we talked about compression and everything else. So all of those things is a complex situation. There's no magic wand, but we have to look at all of these things collectively to see what we can do. But I think that for the city of Palatka, I think we do well here. We need to continue to pay our people as much as we can without breaking the bank.
Yeah, but I got you. But I think, Commissioner, one of the things that's happening is the guy who's been with us for 10 or 15 years is now being offered that $15,000 signing bonus somewhere else. He could retire from here and go there, and he becomes that new guy.
Right.
And so or we got officers who've been here 3 years and they've got some good training, and they can go to another agency and make 20 grand more. And so it's always been an issue. Money's going to continually be an issue. You're never going to satisfy the money question, because here's the deal. While we were regrouping in October, as we moved into the budget, everybody else was too. So when we set our standards now became the floor. When we thought we were in the middle of the road, we became the floor because everybody else just started jumping up again. And it's happening over and over. And so I think the reality is, as we continue on, the purpose of the salary survey was so that it becomes a moving document. And ever so often we have to go back and look at it. I know we're less than a year into it now. And I agree, we can't break the bank trying to compete, because we aren't Jacksonville, we aren't Daytona. Daytona's got what, 200 plus sworn officers. We can't compete with that. They've got a multi-billion-dollar tourism budget. But the reality is we have to compete with them because they're only 45 miles away. We've got to compete with St. Augustine and their salary may be $8,000 different, or St. Johns County. And so we've got to consciously say, hey, okay, Palatka's a smaller agency, but our salaries are competitive. They may not be as high, but they're competitive. And you may not be patrolling a 30-mile area. You may be patrolling a 5-mile area. And so, or from an HR perspective, from HR or from Public Works, we can say, hey, we're a smaller community, so your tasks aren't going to be as vast over the course of the day. You calculate that as well. So it's kind of like, and you're looking at sanitations. A lot of guys jumped up and went to Waste Pro. But there's a difference between being on the back of the truck with a lift and being on the back of the truck throwing stuff into the back of the truck and jumping out when you're a driver. So yeah, you make $5 more an hour, but you earn it. And so we have to make sure that as we advertise what we have in place, that we always consciously do that. And I think that the city manager and Ms. Jones, I think, and all the department heads continually try to do as much as they can. But I think it's a lot easier if I say, Chief, you can go, we got a little money for travel. You can go to the job fair for everyone who's in criminal justice, leaving the University of Florida or FAMU or Bethune-Cookman, and you can go there and try to recruit guys who we know we may not have but 3 years, but they're going to come out with college degrees. It's going to up the standards of the agency in some areas from an education standpoint. And we may retain some of those guys based upon certain opportunities that exist. So, those are the things that we have in place. So we got to consciously keep moving. And I think it's doing what you said, which is being conscious of the budget, what the impacts are. But at the same time, continually saying we're going to be competitive. We're going to be, we're not going to be them because that's not who we are. But we're going to make sure that we're competitive. And I think from the recruitment side of it, you're hamstrung a little bit when you got 6,500 for the year to do certain things, and that spreads out all departments. So when you look at it, that's like $800 per department, and or less. And so I think that number has to be higher, and I think it makes it different. You agree with that, Mr. Holmes?
Absolutely.
So, what that number is, I don't know, but I think it's worth a conversation if that's something that the commission's open to. And I know Commissioner Jones has, spent a number of years in HR as well. And I know that, we've all sat here on the commission on the dais and had to deal with it from our standpoint, and everybody sees, what those impacts are. And we're constantly looking around and the faces in the room change. So that's my spiel. I think we're all in agreement. It's just a matter of making sure that we do it in a responsible manner. But I think we've got to put an additional tool in the chest. You agree with that, Ms. Jones? So is there anything else that you would like to see that you think would help you out?
Got a hard copy. Yeah, the hard copy.
Those glasses might help too.
That's for HR, right?
Yeah.
So what we're doing is, so the suggestion is to take, is you're basically getting rid of the admin position and adding additional money for a director.
Correct. So the salary difference is between the coordinator position and the director. So it isn't a complete added new position. It's just you're seeing the difference in the salaries.
Anything in the training budget from Ms. Jones?
Yes, we have $4,000 budgeted, which is $2,000 per person. So when we sat down, I think we discussed adding 2,000 so that there would be enough training for 2 individuals to go instead of just 1.
Is that an adequate amount for the training for that department?
Your typical travel and training is at about 2,000 a person.
No, okay, we have it set for 2, but it depends on actually what conferences, because when we're just talking about the annual SHRM conference that's held, that would even virtually, $2,000 would take that for 1 person.
Wow.
That's virtually for the annual, because in person, it's actually held in New Orleans. So you can imagine the cost if you go in person.
Right.
Yeah.
So just to be virtually with that annual conference, it's like $1,750, and that's discounted depending on how you sign up. So.
And you missed the opportunity to network, which is the critical piece.
Yes.
I think when you're talking, at the end of the day, I'd rather not shortchange the opportunity to talk to other government HR folks to be able to say, when you're in those conferences, our benefit at Florida League of Cities isn't necessarily the trainings. It's the things that happen in between the trainings and the relationships that you build so that you can bring that stuff back. So you can find out what they're doing in Oklahoma City that may be beneficial for Palatka.
Exactly.
And now you've got another person who is, a resource. And so I think that, when you're doing this stuff virtually, sometimes there's a disadvantage. And so at the end of the day, while it may cost an extra $2,000 to go to that conference, you're going to bring back a $20,000 savings in what we put in place as it relates to efficiencies of operation.
Yes.
And so those are the places I think that we have to make sure we're conscious of how we spend dollars, and are we truly maximizing the benefit in doing that? So
I would, or would you just increase, I guess you increase the budget for at least about to 35, maybe 3,500, 5,000 maybe?
Okay.
So that can happen unless you have like a pool of money that where, okay, if any department need, or if another department doesn't take their training, then you can pull from those lines. But just make sure that the training that needs to happen.
Correct.
So that nobody's
And that's pretty
deprived.
standard practice, down to what we do. For instance, I found myself having some additional funding because I did not go to the FGFOA conference. So I actually moved funding over to the clerk's budget
Right, okay.
for travel. So it is common practice for us. So right now we have 4,000 slotted. Last year it was 2,000. So are you suggesting to increase it in addition to that?
In addition
Okay.
to the 2,000.
Okay.
Saying it's already.
Because the
Yeah.
virtual
So
almost eat it up.
We'll go ahead and add an additional 2
Yeah, virtual training.
to
And
make it
then
6,000. Okay,
Yes.
because you got travel and lodging
okay.
and food.
Depends on where it is.
So it's,
Yeah.
it's the same as ours. the 6,000.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
The only difference is they're doing it for 2 people.
2 people. So just
But it could be a situation where only one person's going, or
Or
they're
some
gonna,
of it
they're gonna alternate
webinar.
different. They're gonna alternate different.
Okay.
right, alternate.
But
Yeah.
I think that's a critical piece as far as the budget for recruitment. I would like to see at least, I think we need to put a $10,000 recruitment budget in place, as a test, so that we can start to see what we can do, and see if it has a benefit this year overall on getting us a different applicant pool. And so we find ourselves in a lot of these positions where we don't necessarily get qualified applicants in place, and we're re-advertising, taking on a cost. And, if we position ourselves and we go to the right place, then you don't have to do that. And so, and that's not counting the man hours that go into putting it all together. And so, we may save by going on Indeed or doing some other things, where if we went to one of these professional job fairs, we may be in the mix with people, then we can get a better feel of who they are at that time. So I think Mr. McNair is a shining example of what happens when you meet the people face to face, and you see what's going on, and it's instant returns. I'll probably never say that again, but just for the but no, I think he's a prime example. The city manager and I got a chance to go out and meet him face to face, and you go out and have that conversation, and the end result was you now have an understanding of the person behind the resume.
Question. Now, when we built that recruitment budget, was it something that we put together internally? Did we do any, like looking at some of the other budgets from other cities or surveys, or how was it built?
It's not in
It's
there.
nothing
The
in there. All
mayor
we got is
just
the 6,500
proposed
in
it.
advertisement right now. We're trying to build it now. So we only have 6,500 in advertising.
Right. So, I mean, it could be more than that, because when you say you calculated like $800 department, So if you're trying to recruit people to fill these positions across the city, it should not be restricted to, I mean, I think it could probably be even more, I mean, in terms of.
I mean, you know, I was saying add 10,000 to that 6,500.
Okay,
But I think the
make it-
reality,
make-
but the reality of it is that 25,000
Make it a-
will probably be a better number, but I don't know what impacts that's gonna have.
Make it 2025 in 2025, and let's see where it goes and adjustments from there, I guess.
Yeah, so you look at that as a mark, yeah.
'Cause-
2025,
Right, you don't want to restrict
25,
recruiting.
so.
To your point, Mr. Mayor, also, within that recruitment budget, you could allocate money for bringing some of your candidates who might apply from out of town down for a personal interview. So,
Right.
you know.
That's part of it. That's absolutely part of it.
May I ask a question, please?
No, sir.
Thank you.
It's only for the people that are present.
I am
Go ahead,
present
sir.
just via technology. I can't look at it right now, but are there allocations within just say the police or the fire or any other department for recruitment?
No.
And if so, there's none, absolutely none.
It's all funneling through HR. It's all funneling through that. They're using that $6,500 to do everything citywide. And that was one of the big issues. That's why that's why it's coming up.
Okay, I just wanted to make sure, just so that if there was that money could not be reallocated to go through HR instead of directly from the department itself. That's the only reason why I was asking.
Right. So definitely appreciate it. Any other questions or comments on HR?
So what we put them at, 25?
Commissioner McCaskill suggested 25.
25?
Ms. Shank, you think this is a good stopping place for us?
We have two left that I think we can get through quickly.
What are
We have
they?
Planning and zoning and IT.
Okay, yeah, okay, we'll move forward.
IT's last. Planning and zoning, not too many changes in this, but I will note that we did talk to our current provider for the copiers and leases. And we are budgeting for a printer plotter rental. I'll defer to Ms. Walsh to explain the benefits of that. But if you think about how much we pay in printing to go to Staples every time we need a wide
For a
format
plotter?
print, it's something that we can actually lease through Sasines, and it would save us money. Because
So-
it's about $2 a page at Staples.
Who you leasing through?
Sasines, that's who we have our current contract with.
So let's also, just for the purposes of just the historical context, look at your local providers as well to see if they offer it, because when we switched our printing contract, it was a point of contention. So I think we want to make sure we give them an opportunity to bid as well, so that we compare apples to apples and go from there. So you remember that, Mr. Holmes? So,
I do.
So I just want to make sure that when you do it, I think just make sure and see what local options exist as well, and then you can weigh on what you got as you're doing your bids.
On larger jobs.
I'll give you some history. So I think
Just want to make sure we're, getting
the best bang for the buck. So at the end of the day, I just want you to make sure that you dot your I's and cross your T's.
All right.
So
Legal ads, that is something that we did notice an uptick last year. We prepared for that in this year's budget and also projecting in next year's budget. Due to, kind of catching up on all the cases that were behind, the legal advertisement is at 14,000, whereas historically you didn't really see anything being spent out of there. So
I think we're gonna see more.
I don't know if I got that sheet.
On legal.
Or that
on
one.
planning and zoning,
Some planning and zoning.
But,
We also only have one newspaper right now of general countywide circulation. So whereas before you might be able to run legal ads You had some options, you don't now.
Yeah, so I think we're gonna see a steady increase as it relates to where we are. Also, one of the things I want us to look at in the coming year is the revival of a building and zoning department for the city. With the amount of action that's taking place, the county is already overwhelmed with what they have in place. And I think they're amping up. At some point, that's going to be a conversation that we look at as we start talking about impact fees and all this other stuff about going back in-house or contracting or whatever it may be in order to get some of those services over here, because everything's becoming a hotbed in Putnam right now. And it's sooner or later, you got to have that conversation. And so, I think the county's done a great job in helping us. It's been a great partnership, looking at fire marshal services, some of those other things that were there. But, Assistant Chief Branford, you're out there on the run every day. It's never been this active around here. So yeah, I think something that Ms. Walsh has been looking at as well. It's building out the department for the future. And so that may take some sacrifice for us, and it may be an opportunity to at least start to cost it up as we look into the next year. So anything else, Ms. Shank?
There is one decision unit for planning and zoning, which is the comp plan. That is $75,000, and that's for a consultant to come in and update the city's comp plan. So that's something that as we go through, once again, it's on that list for consideration. Do you want to speak about the comp plan?
I don't think she has to. She's already talked about it, and we know it's necessary.
Okay.
Any questions? We don't have to do an evaluation appraisal report. My apologies. We don't have to do an evaluation and appraisal report right now because our comp plan has the state required elements in there. For example, you might remember last year we included or adopted a private property rights element in the comp plan. That was required by the statutes and the latest legislation. So we are up to date in that respect. However, in the comp plan, there's many things that just need to be refreshed. Things have changed a lot since 2008, 2009, as you all know.
And so
it would help set the vision for the entire city.
Yeah. So we don't need any ear amendments. But I guess that you've also looked for some funding sources for that as well.
We did. That's something else I wanted to let you all know. I don't want to, what do you say, what's the word I'm looking for? I wanted to say it too early. Put the cart
before the horse.
Yeah, but we did receive we applied for 3 grants through the DEO this past early summer. We were awarded 1, and it was for a historic preservation survey update. So that was it, and that's in the amount of $30,000. One of those applications was for the comp plan update, but we didn't get that one.
Okay. So what's the pleasure of the commission at this point as it relates to comp plan?
I say we need to add it in. It has to be done, and there's no sense in shortchanging that because we got some requirements that we have to meet, and we might as well go ahead and focus on, getting ahead of the curve as opposed to waiting, being reactive. We don't want to be reactive. We want to be proactive.
It's the critical piece to the puzzle at the end of the day. Comp plan is the driver. We've had this conversation for a number of years as to where we were. We even had Mr. Holmes working on ear amendments at one point as council, cleaning up some stuff so that we'd be in compliance. So that was kind of I'll say a science project for lack of any other term that we ended up taking on. not by choice necessarily at that time, but we learned that we were, this was 2015 or 16 or so, and we learned that, our public hearings were extremely old and the community had changed significantly. And, the longer we wait, the longer we're going to be in the same position. So I think this is the time to start looking at that and having that conversation. Commissioner McCaskill.
Just walked out.
Okay, so by consensus with me and Commissioner Boral and Commissioner Campbell, you agree?
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes, sir, I agree.
Okay, so
She was nodding yes.
we got her. I already know. I'll give her a hard time. Tell her we voted it down when she comes back. So yeah, so that's 4. So let's add it in and see what it does. Budget's growing by the minute.
All right.
Thank you, commissioners.
All right, thank you.
IT, one increase that we have in there is the Inspire technology contract. And then you'll also see in software subscriptions and licenses, that is where we've housed everything for the Office 365, the antivirus, the ADG, and ClearGov. So if you remember, ClearGov is the digital budget book that was approved, that's 7,500 of that increase. And then also we found a lot of users needing to add more licenses for Adobe, which is about $17 a person a month.
What are we looking at for telephone stuff that we talked about?
For cell phones?
Telecommunication, are you adding that in there? Remember we talked about looking at telecommunications adjustments? Looking at different carriers?
Yes, that is not included in here. So we did receive a quote back, I believe, from FirstNet, and we were comparing our current costs with Verizon to FirstNet. So that's still being looked at, but no, it is not built into this number.
There's some other providers I'll link you up with as well.
That would actually be in every department budget because it'd be in their communications lines.
Yeah, I've got another contact for you as well.
Okay. And then also hardware, every year we get with our IT department and our IT contractor and go over laptops, computers, and tough books that need to be replaced, and that is on a cycle.
We doing anything with hotspots? Additional hotspots?
We just have the MiFi, I believe. I don't know. I'm sorry. I can't speak on that.
Currently, I think it falls into the discussions we had with the
FirstNet
communication providers.
About getting some more?
Well, to see what they can provide in addition.
Okay.
Right now, currently, we are fine with our plan, where we are. But it depends on where we are cost-wise.
Commissioner, we decided not to do the comp plan stuff.
Really?
No, just no, we're just joking.
It fell from your vote. No, you had nodded your head on that.
Absolutely.
We took it on. We took it under consideration. We got your nod.
Okay.
But you answered just right. So not from a compliance standpoint, from a need.
From a need, we are fine right now, with especially from the police department, as it concerns the hot. For number-wise, as far as the equipment portion, we are fine as it stands for hotspots right now. We don't have a need for additional hotspots. I think one of the things we're looking at currently is what else the other providers can provide for us and what we can get in addition that may not only when we're looking at cost, but may assist us with additional equipment.
Okay. So like, for example, our IT in the Price Martin Center, for example, it was about like the IT in the Price Martin Center was like Commissioner Rawls' IT today. It was trying to get that signal the other day online. It ended up working out well, but those are places where we had difficulty. And so
River Center was another one.
Yeah.
I believe all of those were fixed and addressed.
No.
Are we looking, now, I apologize, but we're talking about the hotspots or the Wi-Fi?
No, we switched conversation.
Wi-Fi?
Yeah, so on the Wi-Fi side. So those are areas where we look at what we need to do. So everybody good with what we got so far in IT?
And
Will that
fishing
also
and
be
training.
included for future
For,
with the
he's with Commissioner Jones now.
I think he said Jenkins.
technology?
Did you say Jenkins? Commissioner, will you repeat it?
I guess we were talking about this.
Yes.
Yes,
I think
is
what
that
he's trying to
inclusive?
refer to is the IT or the internet capabilities over at Jenkins is very low.
Yeah.
The reception, receiving different things, and the need to increase Wi-Fi or internet capabilities at Jenkins.
That is not built in there, but I anticipate as we go through that grant for Jenkins and the upgrades to the facility, that's something that we could address in that. So I'll make sure I make a note of it in Jenkins as a note, because Jenkins actually has its own department.
I had a question on the Adobe.
Mhm.
Which Adobe, what that they're using? Are they using Adobe Writer or Reader?
Writer.
Writer?
Adobe Acrobat, sir.
Well, yeah, but you got different Adobe.
Correct.
You got either Reader or Writer.
We found that staff needs the writer to have the editing capabilities, to be able to have electronic signatures as needed.
All staff?
Not all staff, no, but we've had to increase our licenses is the problem. So as we're adding on, more staff that needs that capability, we're having to add licenses.
Right,
And it's
but-
about $17 a month per person.
Right, but that's per person. So you're just adding it per person as opposed to all the staff.
Yeah, it's per person. Hold on, I'll tell you exactly how many I
What's your saying?
budgeted for.
I think basically what and just speaking on in terms of the police department, you have different areas and different individuals within the police department that has to have the sign-on ability. And not having that on the computers doesn't allow. For instance, I'll give you an example. We do our warrants now online, electronically. So you have to have supervisors and administration that are able to sign, and the judges sign and the lawyers sign electronically now, and not having that Adobe capability won't allow us to do that.
I mean,
So it's just certain individuals, not all the way across the board.
That's what I was saying, just as a need, as opposed to 160 something employees.
Identify the essentials.
Right, because it's, if you don't want that added cost, I mean, it helps out.
And we've tried to hold the line. That's something that I watch closely. So as the need rises for a person to be added, I review the list to make sure that, maybe someone could be removed.
Right.
So that is something we look at. So for Acrobat, I budgeted for 35 users.
You got it under control. I know. And do we still, I know the county don't use Inspired anymore, are they still?
I don't
know
believe so.
corporate-
I think they ended their contract with Inspired.
Yeah. So are we still good with Inspired and they're good with us?
Mr. Holmes? I will tell you from my standpoint and Jonathan's, we have not experienced any changes with the turnover since Corbett left.
Okay.
I know that recently Jonathan worked with them on a water tower project, and him and Kayla can speak more to that.
Okay.
But as far as I know, it went seamless.
I just want to make sure, we're getting the services that we're paying for. I know if the county moved to not use them, I'm good.
The county just did.
The county.
They didn't renew. Okay. Any other comments, questions, concerns on IT? Seeing none.
Oh, one other thing. Now, we just had that one law passed where they're gonna have to comply from a cybersecurity standpoint and implement different controls. How are we gonna move forward with that by 2023, 24.
I believe in their presentations, they had addressed that, but we'll make sure that we follow back up on that and include you in that conversation.
All right, or just, we need to look at all those different things. Okay, that's all I have.
Anything else? You sure?
Yeah, this time. I wasn't sure last time.
All right, we're at 12 o'clock. We're gonna go ahead if there's nothing else. Any closing comments, Ms. Shank?
Nothing. Thank you for your patience. I do anticipate potentially needing another budget workshop.
Yeah,
So.
I figure early September date will get us where we need to be and we can go from there. Commissioners, anything else? Mr. Holmes? Seeing nothing